either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And today we are talking about one of the most well-known actors in the world, the man who David Lynch described as the jazz musician of American acting.
Oh, no.
The man whose rage cannot be caged.
Oh, no.
We're talking about Drive Angry for our first of Nic Cage November.
Yes. We have, for some reason, decided that during the month of November, we should, even outside of this podcast, watch as much Nic Cage movies as we can.
Yeah.
So, here we are. Also, for today's drink, I asked you today at work a little bit too late if you had any Skull Cups. So you have a Jack Skellington mug and a Venom head, and we're going to drink beer out of them, just like Nic Cage.
Guinness. The beer of men.
Mostly because I already had Guinness. I didn't go buy this for this.
I know you did it. Cheers.
Slightly over temperature, just like I like it.
I like warm Guinness, though. I don't really like it chilled.
It's not really supposed to be drunk chilled, I don't think. There's an optimal temperature, though, and if I remember right, this is a hair over that, but I'm okay with it.
I'm good with it. So
I also like warm Coke, so like, where am I sitting? Like, I don't know if I'm a good judge of this.
So today, we picked. I
shouldn't say we. You picked Drive Angry, and I went, yeah, sounds good.
We decided that November is my month to pick movies because I'm more familiar with Nicolas Cage films than you are.
Especially since all of the Nic Cage films I've seen are fairly overly done mainstream. National Treasure.
Yeah.
Mostly National Treasure.
And I like to do the deep dive and find everything I can.
And, like, I know Nic Cage can be in good movies.
Mm-hmm.
I've just never seen them. Yeah.
And I do apologize. I didn't realize that we had picked two Grindhouse movies so close together.
Yes, and, like...
Or Grindhouse style movies.
Definitely Grindhouse style. And I will say that while this movie is definitely falls in that category, it is a whole different feel than our last Grindhouse film.
Yes.
Mostly because Nic Cage is in it.
And from what I was reading, it falls under the car style, the car exploitation films of Grindhouse.
Sure, yeah.
So
and it also very much wanted to, like, it was very much inspired by westerns, supernatural shows. Specifically
High Plains Drifter, which I watched on Sunday because I was curious, and I will tell you, High Plains Drifter is a fantastic movie.
Oh, I was meaning to see it, because it's also Dirty Mary and Crazy Larry, but mostly Crazy Larry, from what I remember in some interviews.
Yeah, unfortunately I didn't get into the car genre films before watching this.
We'll get there, but car genre-wise, while this is definitely in that category, because there is a lot of driving, a lot of anger, and a lot of random explosions and car flips, I wouldn't say that this movie is like the overarching
It's not
epitome.
Gone in 60 Seconds.
It's not even Fast and the Furious.
Yeah. Well, so this movie, to give a brief synopsis.
Yes. Please explain for the ladies and gentlemen at home what the plot to this movie is, because I still am confused.
It's not that confusing. It's about a man who breaks out of hell to save his grandchild from an evil cult. Well, yeah, I'll call them evil cult because we can talk about that a bit later.
Yep, the weird culty people.
And along the way, he's trying to find a surrogate mother.
/ there's a random girl who is maybe surrogate daughter at the same time. And also, there's a supernatural character,
the accountant,
who is arguably my favorite part of this whole movie. Not necessarily because I didn't like Nic Cage's acting or character, I did, but this character felt like it walked straight out of the old episodes of Supernatural, the TV show.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of a younger Death.
He does. In fact, it reminded us all so much of A Younger Death that we spent way too much time arguing on whether or not he had played Death in something. And we all just came to the conclusion that no, it just looks uncannily like that character.
Yeah. But, so, when trying to decide movies for this month, I had picked this movie up because it was listed as like one of his worst movies.
I can see why it was listed that way. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying I see why.
And I got 5 minutes into the movie, and I decided this is what we were going to review first.
I think is a fair a fair judgment call.
Yes,
because while it is, it is over the top in every sense of the word. But because it's over the top, Nic Cage's over the top acting style somehow feels less over the top than the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's a weird...
He feels very toned down in this movie, despite the one sex scene.
Oh god, that was glorious, because from my understanding, he was supposed to be clothed in that.
Yes, he was.
And they address it in that movie, because for some reason, I don't think I've ever seen a movie with Nicolas Cage where there's a sex scene and he isn't clothed of some kind.
I have a theory.
What's that?
So he has a tattoo on his upper shoulder.
Oh.
And my theory is he doesn't want that covered up. And in case you're wondering, I believe it is a tattoo of a monitor lizard wearing a crown.
Beautiful.
I also do not think it is a super small tattoo. Not a big tattoo, not artsy big, but like nice hand-sized monitor lizard.
Yeah, something that'd be a pain to cover.
Yes. My other theory is because he's so secretive about religion, is that maybe this is a religious thing for him. Is maybe, you know, less nips sort of thing. I don't know. I
like how they explain it away in the movie. Mm-hmm. She asks him, why don't you take your clothes off? I never get undressed before a gunfight.
I did like that line a lot, too. And so just to explain... I feel like that scene in particular explains the overtopness of the whole movie without ruining the rest of the movie. Mm-hmm. So he has found a lady of the night to hang out with.
I wouldn't call her a lady of the night. She was a waitress who he charmed.
He did.
Because he pulled out the out-of-date driver's license.
Yes. He pulled out an out-of-date driver's license and she somehow thought, yes, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And they then have a very awkward, but yet somehow almost appropriate sex scene. It's on the same level, I feel like, as like a 300 level sex scene where like, oh, it's in the movie, but that's not gonna like ruin it for if you're watching it with your parents. Only because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, he's screwing this woman while
having a full-on gunfight.
Yeah.
And not just like one dude walked in the door and I shot him. There is acrobatics involved that should not be humanly possible. There's lots of gunfighting. He never puts down his drink or his cigar, I don't think. He might have put down the cigar.
Yeah, because no, you're right. I don't think he puts down the drink at all, because I think at one point he does try saving the drink, too.
Yeah, and then he manages to kill absolutely all of them, and still be clothed, still have his drink, still have his cigar, and then just be the cool John that he is. But fun fact about that scene, so apparently while they were filming that scene, one of the shells went up in the air and then down the back of his pants.
Yes.
And burned his rear end. But like a true champion, he finished the scene and then immediately ripped off his pants.
Yeah, and that's a sign of his dedication as a method actor.
Yes, very much so, because you know that his character would not have cared if a burning hot shell was down his pants.
Yeah. Well, before we get too far into the movie, because that doesn't happen too far into it, I want to talk about a little bit about some of the stuff I heard while I was listening to the writer and director Patrick Lussier.
Sure.
Lussier, I think is how I pronounce it, and writer Todd Farmer.
Yes.
So they came up with the title of this movie while they were watching and talking about Groundhog Day.
Yes.
But instead of repeating the same stuff, he's coming back to avoid repeating it. And on top of that, so the intro scene when he comes blazing in his car and he's chasing after these...
busting out of hell in his car.
He was originally supposed to be walking like the accountant. Yes.
Well, and okay, so... And I've heard mixed feelings about this. I think I'm in the first party. So there's one side of the street who... So that original scene showing him busting out of hell in the car was not originally supposed to be part of the beginning part of the story.
Right, that was added to the movie.
Yeah. And so a lot of people were kind of bummed that we ruined the surprise of him already being dead/undead right off the bat.
Yeah.
Whereas if you hadn't shown that scene, you wouldn't definitively know that he was most certainly dead and had busted out of hell until much farther down the movie. And you would have had these fun little pieces to try and put it together, like the driver's license that's very expired.
Yeah, and I feel that was added probably post to show off the 3D effects. Because this movie was made and released during like the big boom of everything's released in 3D, which I hate 3D movies.
I know you do. And I am normally not a 3D fan either. But the way that this one's writing went, the 3D, while over the top and definitely not necessary, was not forced in there to the point where you're like, aha, this now I cannot even watch it. It's more of like oh, you remember when 3D was the thing? Oh, yeah. It's more of that feel of 3D. Where, like, occasionally you are blatantly reminded that this movie was supposed to be in 3D.
The Nintendo 3DS.
Yeah, and, like, you were probably supposed to bought this with the 3D, like, glasses that were supposed to go with the TV. And then at one point, the TV in your home was going to be 3D, and we were all going to have 3D glasses in our house to watch movies. And then that just didn't happen.
Now it's 4K, and now I think I heard they came out with 8K.
Why? That seems unnecessary.
We don't even see in 4K.
I know I don't see in 4K.
God, if I do. I learned one of my jackets is green.
Oh, surprise!
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, my favorite way to watch movies is, like, when they're square. Rectangle's nice, wide view's beautiful, but boy, that square with that line running through the middle because you busted your TV out of anger that one time, beautiful.
Yeah, and the one thing I appreciate about this movie is that it definitely gives a feeling of the carsploitation genre, which was popular in the 70s and 80s. It doesn't feel like it's set in modern times.
No, it definitely, like, even from the beginning of writing it didn't feel like it was going to date itself quickly because it was going for modern. All of the cars they chose are cars that even when they were new cars would have been considered like a hot rod classic. And so even a couple of years later, or much, much later, like we're now watching it, it's still a car that lots of people see on the roads. Like, they are still popular cars to revamp and drive around. So it still works. Yeah. It's still fine. Could the cars do most of the flippy things? I do not believe so. I think the physics in this movie are real jankety, and I have many questions.
It reminds me of those Bollywood movies, which I saw a great clip this week of the car flipping to the side and the dude shooting it back upright with his shotgun.
That is very on point to how this movie feels. The other thing that I very much liked was the baseline writing for this movie was done with fun and an intentional level of quirky detail to it. A good example is they wanted the sheriff character to obviously be a killjoy. He was meant to be no fun. He was meant to be there to ruin the party. And so originally they wanted him to come out wearing a shirt that says Snape kills Dumbledore on it, real big. And surprise, surprise, they were not allowed to do that because
shocking.
This was too early. That was too early of a release. So instead they sent him out in a shirt with a ton of spoilers on it, including Dumbledore kills Snape.
Well, and on top of that, like, the way this movie was written, originally Milton, Nicolas Cage's character, was supposed to be a 70-year-old man.
Yeah, which makes the name Milton make a lot more sense.
Yeah, and also him being dead and living a shitty life make more sense. But a lot of the stuff that was brought to the movie was as Milton's character, was Nicolas Cage's doing.
Very much so. And like, evidently so.
They originally wrote him as a hard ass, which
he's still a little bit there.
He is.
You can still see that.
But those moments remind me of High Plains Drifter.
Yeah.
Because that movie, he comes into town, he kills 3 people and rapes a woman right in the very beginning of the movie, and it's like, well, he's an asshole.
Yeah. And on top of that, because Nic Cage got them to rewrite the character, I should say.
I wouldn't even say rewrite.
Just let him be.
Yeah, he's like, hey, I'm going to do this instead.
He did rewrite it a little bit, because there were a couple of small lines and scenes that they explain away why he looks the same, is because he doesn't age in hell. Mm-hmm. In hell, you are forever the same. But the rest of it, you can tell that Nic Cage was in charge, in a way, of pulling his character together to fit into the rest of the world, which I think he did a good job with.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I think Nic Cage pulled a little bit more heavily than the writers did from old westerns.
Well, that was one thing they mentioned too, is that they pulled inspiration from High Plains Drifter.
Yes.
And then Nicolas Cage brought it to their attention on his own. They didn't even tell him.
Yes. And you can tell in the little ways that Nic Cage acts in this movie that he's trying to pull it more Western than the writers were even going. Mm-hmm. A good example is like how he sits in the car. He sits in kind of that how John Wayne used to sit on a horse, where it looks a little uncomfortable, but maybe you're fine. Mm-hmm. He walks with kind of like an unnecessary stiffness, which at some points you could argue is, oh, well, that's because he just got beat up or shot. And then other times you're like, no, he just looks like he has stanky leg like a lot of Westerns did.
He's a shambling corpse.
Yes.
Wait, actually, I bring that into question. So if someone comes back from the dead, and their body's rotted, what comes back?
See, that's why the genie from Aladdin refused to bring people back, because it doesn't look good. And
it just the logistics of it, like,
oh yeah, no, there's a lot of no thank yous to bringing dead people back, I think. But another reason why I think this movie was as much fun as it was to watch, other than just the over-the-topness, was you can tell Nic Cage really wanted to be in it.
Yes, no, they mentioned that, like, they didn't really, I don't think they knew who they wanted to cast, but Nicolas Cage got the script and he said he had to do this movie. And
from what I heard, the reason he gave to not just them, but to like multiple people, was he had just gotten done with Season of the Witch, which I still want to watch, even though I know it's not good.
Yeah.
I still want to watch it, but the reason he picked this movie right after it was because in Season of the Witch, originally his character was supposed to have its eye shot out by an arrow. And he loved the idea of that. And so when he got the script for this one, he said, I will do it as long as you keep the scene where he gets his eye shot out. Mm-hmm. And they said, yeah, of course. Like, of course we can. Which is why I think the eye being shot portion of it takes so long to get through. Mm-hmm. Is because he is legitimately having a great time thinking of all of the ways that this eye, how long it would heal, what it would look like, should it be a different color after it's come back.
Yeah.
Like, there's an unnecessary amount of detail given to just his eye.
And that was one thing that they had talked about too, is trying to explain away what happens when someone who is not of the living is shot.
Yes.
And do their wounds stay? Do they just start to rot more? Yeah. Or what happens? And they came up with it just heals. You
go back to how you used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I also think part of the reason why the eye was overdone more than it necessarily needed to be was because, and I have no proof of this, but I have a very large hunch that Nic Cage probably requested that eye be turned white or grayed out until it was done healing. So for a large chunk of the end of the movie, where there's a lot of action and chase scenes and driving scenes, he has a very intense gaze because of this white eye.
Yeah.
That then also has like extra blood and stuff around it. Mm-hmm. So he looks very scary and angry because of this, which I think he had a lot of fun doing.
Yeah. And if I remember right, they did mention that not only pulling off the role, like adding his nuances, Nic Cage is a good driver.
Yeah, that was surprising to me. I don't know why, because I also know he, like, used to collect cars to an extent. And, like, he really liked his cars. But, I don't know, I never clicked in my head that he was also good at driving them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like me, I collect video games, but I'm kind of shit at them.
Yeah, I feel that.
It's fun.
I feel that.
But I think another thing that really added to the movie is his surrogate daughter is Piper, played by Amber Heard.
I think she did a great job.
She did a fantastic job. She played the badass woman,
yes,
but in a believable manner, because that's one of the things I see with a lot of female protagonists, is that she
went in with zero baseline training or anything like that. She's just supposed to be a standard, greasy spoon waitress who's probably been in a bar fight or two.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is you will see these movies and the badass woman in it is taking down Philip-sized men, like multiple men that size.
And they're always supposed to have been doing it without any, like, previous training or, instincts took over and they managed to take down people. And while I do like the concept and I think it's really fun to watch that level of choreography, I did also like watching her get beat up a little bit too.
Yeah.
It felt a little bit more real.
Yeah, but at the same time, Todd Farmer, the writer, who, by the way, was also her shit boyfriend.
Oh, good. He was a fun character to watch get beat up.
He was. He said she could throw a punch. He was left bruised after their fight scene. Which, that's the thing, though, is you can tell she's, at least the way that's played, she's throwing her punches.
Yes.
Or not throwing her punches.
She's not holding back.
Yeah, she's not holding back. But she is still getting overpowered in the end by the antagonists.
Yeah. And one of the other actors, I think it was the actor who played the head of the cult. Later on, there's a scene where her and him have to wrestle around in the back of a weird RV while she's trying to, like, escape / maybe hopefully kill him. And he said originally he was excited to get to wrestle with a pretty lady on set. And he's like, after we got done, I never wanted to do that again. It was awful.
Yeah, no, she is definitely a strong female character without being unbelievable.
Yeah, and she also did leave room for, like, she at no point took her character to the next level of, like, oh, well, now magically she knows how to throw a punch a little bit better, or she knows where to aim a punch better. No, she's just instinctively punching people.
Yeah.
And it works on this movie. I also think that her character, on top of just being a believable bar fight actress, the part of the reason why I liked her in the movie, despite not necessarily liking these sorts of people in real life, her acting and her character were unapologetically over-sexy all the time, but not in the way that, like, oh, she was written that way, but more in, like, I like wearing my Daisy Dukes and my boots and my little short shirt, and that's who I am sort of character.
Yeah.
And she played it really well, and even in, like, the little nuances, like, when she goes to drive the car, when she goes to throw it back into reverse, she doesn't just throw it back in reverse, she fondles the stick a little bit more than is necessary for that.
As the writer or director mentioned, she drives gear shift like a cock.
Yes. And while it's a little bit more than I normally would like to have in a friend circle, it does work for her character.
Yes.
It puts her in that over-the-top level so that she matches Nic Cage's over-the-top character.
And even on top of that, when he's hooking up with the waitress, she's in the other room making the guy that she's brought to her room paint her nails.
Yes. I mean, have to have somebody paint your nails.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last main character, I think, because honestly, the cult leader, while he is in this movie, did not strike me as a rememberable character. I think the accountant is the third main character for this.
I would definitely say that. He feels more like the main antagonist.
He really does.
But, spoilers at the end, he's not really that bad of a guy. No,
he's doing his job.
Yeah. And they mentioned that he's very much like, what's his name? Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive. When Harrison Ford's at the end of the waterway, he's like, I'm innocent. I don't care.
Yeah.
It was a very much that feeling. He knows what's right. He knows what's wrong. He's just doing what he's been told to do.
Yes. But he's not also quite as black and white as some of those characters in the past have been written. He knows that he has to bring Nic Cage's character back to hell. But, I mean, if you're gonna kill the satanic cult leader, who he mentions that he is definitely not in league with Satan because he's never heard of this person before, which I liked the snooty remarks that he gave to that. To just the cult in general, because every time the cult would say, oh, we're doing this in the name of Satan, he'd go, well, you clearly haven't done your research, because Satan doesn't like that.
Mainly to the sacrifice of a child, which we both love that scene, because
it was very entertaining.
Though we're not Satanists by any means.
No, I just
appreciate good research. Yes.
And the accountant's character, while definitely doing his job, didn't really see any problem with letting the timeline go a little over so that Nic Cage can finish what he started. I also they left enough mystery to his character that you were very anxious to see what else he could do. Yeah. He had a weird coin, which I now know was supposed to have been a coin representing passage to the afterlife, which I think is a Greek the Greek tradition.
The Greeks, they would put, I think it was a coin in the mouth or over the eyes, because it was something the dead would carry over to the afterlife and pay for their trip down the river Styx.
Yeah, and so that was supposed to be part of that was, well, he's part of the person guiding you to the afterworld, and so thus the coin, which we can briefly see has old-timey stuff embedded onto it. And the coin seems to kind of do whatever he wants. Again, physics, there are none in this movie. He flicks it, it goes wherever he wants. But it also turns into an FBI booklet, which I liked at first because you're given a brief moment of question on whether or not he is actually part of the FBI, which I liked.
Yeah, and that's one thing I really like about this movie, too, is it's not over the top with its supernatural elements.
No, there's just enough.
Yeah, we question the physics, but we can chalk it up to his coin is a magical item.
Well, and also physics for this genre in general, especially car genres, you can just kind of take those and throw them right out the window most of the time. So, like, yeah, the physics are bad. I'm not angry that the physics are bad, and especially when it comes to his physics, I don't care at all, because he's not supposed to be of this world. And I also like that he's in there because it's very easy to forget that Nic Cage is supposed to go back to hell soon. Yeah. Like, I know they keep reiterating it here and there throughout the movie, but having him being pursued by a supernatural character adds a level of urgency to it that I don't think the movie would have had otherwise.
Yeah. No, I think... Yeah, because honestly, as much as the sheriff's an antagonist, and as much as the cult leader is...
Yeah, and I mean, the only timeline we're really given is from the cult leader, which honestly feels like it could have been easily written a bunch of different ways, where they could have extended that. Yeah. So having this supernatural being coming for him, telling him, no, but really, you're not supposed to come back. Yeah. Please come back.
Not only coming back, but he sneaks this god-killing weapon out of hell.
Which I learned was based off of a real gun called the Pepper Pot gun. Yep. Which, for those of you who haven't seen it, it looks like a fake gun. It looks like a Nerf gun. But cooler.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cool prop. It
is a cool prop. I think the only thing I didn't particularly care about the gun was we didn't get a whole lot of rules to the gun.
No, but...
Like, I don't really know how many shots we get with the gun. It's not really explained if, like, it's an indefinite shot sort of thing, or if there's only so many. And then the other thing is, every time it's fired, it throws whoever fired it way back in the back. Which is fun to an extent, but I feel like that idea could have been played with a little bit more. To have made at least one or two of the main characters had a little bit more power or grounding based off whatever fake rules this gun has.
Yeah, and I'm glad they only kept one item in it, because it reminds me of Supernatural a little bit with the Winchester pistol. Definitely. Where the pistol kind of loses its power when Ruby's introduced with the knife, and then they're introduced how to make more bullets.
Well, and then the other thing that the gun, while I don't dislike the gun doesn't really answer any questions. It just kind of brings questions with it. Like, I understand that we stole the gun so we could shoot the cult leader. But at the same time, we kind of hold on to this gun for the whole movie.
It's almost overkill.
It's a little overkill.
Yeah, well...
It's a little bazooka to a pistol fight.
Well, it's kind of interesting, too, because it's... In a way, it's the Deus Ex Machina, which...
Yes, oh sure.
For those who aren't familiar, because I wasn't super familiar with it, in classic Greek mythology and plays, a lot of times they end with this device called, or a device from the gods. That's literally what it is, Deus Ex Machina. And it's this thing that solves all your problems.
Yes.
Instead of it coming out of nowhere, it's this thing that's with him the whole time.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was hoping for, was a more traditional interpretation of that. I'm not mad at the gun. I kind of like the gun. I just kind of wish it was better built into the world. Yeah. The other question I have, based off of both the gun and Nic Cage's character, but also the world in whole, is we have a gentleman whose sole purpose is bringing dead people back to hell. And we don't really see Nic Cage's character struggle to get out of hell, which leads me to believe that leaving hell is very easy.
Yeah, I mean...
There is literally a highway to hell. And granted, it does dissolve as you're leaving, but Nic Cage's character doesn't seem to have a whole lot of problems figuring that out.
Yeah, or even getting out, because, I mean, as they're coming in the road, as spoilers, he goes back to hell.
I mean...
And he goes back peacefully, too, which is a nice end to it, because he comes and he does what he needs to.
Yep, and then he goes right back.
Yes.
Yeah, he finished what he needed to, other than, making sure his granddaughter grows up to be in a loving, healthy home, but that's fine.
Yeah, but at the same time, at that point, you've become accustomed to Piper's character.
Yeah.
You know she's a good person at heart.
Yeah. And so I think the fact that he goes back peacefully does complete the movie in a way that some of the other action, crazy over-the-top movies don't have, where... It doesn't need a sequel. I'm not requiring one.
No.
But if it had one, I wouldn't be mad.
Yeah, no, I felt the same way too. I kind of wish there was a little bit more to it, where he and the accountant are like this...
weird buddy cop system.
Yeah, buddy cop out of hell to bring down these people. But at the same time, if they did that, you lose your... motivation, because Cage is only back for one thing. He is there to kill the cult leader, which
there for revenge.
I don't think we've really talked about it. The motivation behind it is the cult leader killed his daughter.
Yes.
And the reason he did so is because they were going to use the baby as a sacrifice, and then he tries to force himself on her. She bites his member off.
Yes.
And then he brutally murders her and keeps her femur bone as part of his cane.
Yes. But I think the femur bone, if I remember right, so originally he wasn't supposed to have the femur bone. Originally he was just written without it, and the actor who plays the character requested that his character have a cane. He thought it would make the character a little bit more complete. And so the prop set was tasked with making it, and they decided that, well, why not? It should just be the femur bone. Yeah. Which I think it works. A lot of us had questions on the durability of this femur bone, because while I understand that bones are strong, and I know the femur bone is arguably the strongest bone, he does a lot of over-the-head beating with the femur bone. Yes. And I feel like it would have broken at some point. So maybe he's corded out and put like a rod in the middle.
And at the same time, we don't know how long she's actually been dead.
No.
This could have happened like a couple weeks ago, and it's a fresh bone still.
In that case, he works very quickly.
He has a team to do it for him.
He has a whole bunch of bugs.
Delegation. That is why he is the leader.
I think part of the reason why we also waited till now to talk about the cult leader and the cult in general is while they are definitely the bad guys in the movie, they don't really set a whole lot of urgency, or they don't really seem to pose a whole lot of threat to Nic Cage's character. Piper's character, arguably, yes.
Yeah.
Because she's immortal. They could definitely kill her. Nic Cage's character doesn't really seem to care. He's really just there for the one guy and the baby, and that's it. Which I don't dislike. I would have enjoyed a little bit more depth on the cult itself. As far as, like, they say they're a satanic cult, but they don't really go into, like, what to that group it means. Because they clearly the writers did their research that this group calls themselves that without actually believing or having contacted Satan. But at the same time, we don't get what that truly means to them. We don't understand what the importance of this is. We do understand that some of the members are very willing to die for this cause, and others are very not.
It's a very 80s, 90s satanic panic style of cult.
Yeah, and it lacks the blind faith that a lot of other cult movies bring to the table.
I mean,
there's some characters who definitely have it, but I feel like a lot of the characters are thrown into a brawl-style fight where it's a lot less time to think about your own morals in the cult. And then the one character that they do give that time to, she decides, this isn't worth it, you can have the baby, I'm gonna be gone, bye.
Yeah.
So, I would have liked a little bit more background on the cult, and also how his daughter got wrapped up in them, and that whole scenario.
Yeah, they do leave a lot of questions, which, you know, like you said, they don't need to be answered.
No, they don't need to. It's just something that would have been interesting.
Yeah, even if they talked about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's just a generic cult.
It's just, it's a run-of-the-mill cult. It's fine. It's not particularly rememberable, with the exception of one specific cult member. So there's one specific cult member who, when he came on screen, our entire group could not contain ourselves. So there's one guy. He's not even given a name, I don't think.
I don't remember. I think they mention his character name.
I have no idea. If they do, it is for the briefest of moments, and his only purpose is to be a background cult member during a quote-unquote church scene, which then devolves into a Nic Cage brawl with all of the other cult members.
Which, that was shot in an actual church, and they were super thankful to let them shoot there.
Oh, how sweet. The only reason this character is rememberable is because he is wearing the worst wig we have ever seen in cinema history.
I can't remember, because they mentioned whose wig it was supposed to be.
I don't remember that. All I remember is that I think it was the director, mentioned that they had to go to multiple wig stores to find a wig bad enough.
And when they found the wig, the lady at the desk is like, no, you don't want that one. And they're like, yes,
we do.
That is the wig we want.
Yes. It is atrocious. It is, you know those photos of, like, bad 80s hair choices online where people nowadays go back and laugh at how ridiculous this kid's mullet in the yearbook looks? That's this wig.
It's kind of beautiful at the same time.
It's the wrong color for this man. It is the wrong style for this man. It is the wrong shape. Everything about this wig is wrong, and it's perfect. And he's only in the movie for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's glorious.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a fun part.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing, is this whole movie is
It's fun. It's a fun... Yes, it's grindhousey, and yes, there's a lot of maybe not appropriate for younger teenage kids / middle schoolers. But at the same time, it is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And for those who are a little bit more detail-oriented when they watch their movies, this movie's a little bit more fun, I would say, because of little bits like the shirt worn by the sheriff. I think the first car that we see, Piper's boyfriend's car, is a 1969 Dodge Charger. It's the same car that Dukes of Hazzard drove around.
Okay.
So especially if you're in it more for the cars than you are for the shoot 'em up part of the movie, the cars in this movie are a lot of fun. You can rest easy knowing that most of the cars came out of this fine.
Yeah.
But the cars that they did destroy, all of it was just body damage, and from what I remember reading, they did fix the cars up before giving them back.
Yeah.
Which is very nice of them. I don't know if they fixed the one car that they flipped over the bridge.
That was not supposed to hit the bridge to begin with.
Part of the reason why this movie's fun to me is because it is a weird mix between special effects done on screen and then live special effects done with the standard, what you think of with a car movie where there's explosions and cars being flipped over using springs and that sort of
yeah, and
nonsense.
part of the effects comes from the writer and director wanting to do another 3D movie, but not a pure horror film, because the movie before this, they did My Bloody Valentine.
Yes.
Which I haven't seen yet. I've only seen the 80s version. But relating to Supernatural, I do know the guy who plays Dean Winchester is in My Bloody Valentine.
Yes. Yes. And so going back to the 3D effects, I know you hate them. But were they movie ruining for you for this one?
Not for this one. Like, in the opening scene, you can tell where it's supposed to be 3D.
Oh, there's definitely certain shots. Like, I'm thinking specifically of the scene where the accountant throws the door off of the car, and it comes directly at the camera.
The bullet flying.
I will argue for the bullet flying, because now that sort of scene is so iconic thanks to James Bond intros, that having that sort of 3D slow motion close-up of the bullet is more closer to an homage to that sort of style.
Yeah.
It's still definitely meant to be 3D, but you could argue for it being a look how cool the bullet is.
Yeah, it's not... So I have a couple things against 3D movies, and there's... It falls under two different camps. One where it's blatantly geared straightly towards 3D, like the crowbar flying towards the screen, or in Silent Hill, Pyramid Head swinging his sword at the screen. And it's like...
It's a little unnecessary.
Yeah, it's a little over the top. It doesn't feel right for whatever reason.
And it breaks the mood from the movie otherwise.
And then there's the other camp of 3D films, which I will call films that were 3D that had no reason to be 3D.
Yes.
I'm looking at The Last Airbender.
Yeah, why was that movie even existing? It's so bad. And this is coming from someone who absolutely loves the TV show.
Yeah, well, that's why you don't like it, because it's so bad.
Well, that and just, I don't know, I had some martial art questions that were not answered in that movie, and just general, like, why are the rocks so slow? Why is ground bending so slow? But anyway, there was no reason for that one to be 3D. And then another camp of 3D, which I don't know how much you've actually experienced, is
Jaws 3D.
Kind of. I think Jaws 3D might fit into this category. Movies that were not necessarily originally 3D, and then given it 3D-ness after the overarching movie was already finished. There's a lot of kid movies that fall into this category. I feel
that's how Avatar was, is it wasn't originally supposed to be 3D, but they've made it pseudo 3D.
The pseudo 3D is usually where my line is drawn for 3D. I don't necessarily like watching it in theaters just because it hurts my head. I don't really enjoy movie theater experiences anyway, so that's just another level of uncomfortable that I have to deal with. But at home, I don't really care.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing too, is like at home it's a different experience because they've downgraded the films instead of being the 3D experience they're supposed to be.
Yes, and I think Drive Angry is a rare exception where because it downgraded and went to DVD, which is arguably the way it was meant to be watched.
Yes.
The 3D-ness of it just feels like an homage to being stupid. And less more of like a, hey, look how cool and serious this 3D effect is, like how Avatar was. Which once Avatar came to DVD, honestly, I didn't really see the point in wanting to own it because I couldn't watch it in its true, pure form anymore. Yeah,
which, let me ask a question on that.
Yes.
So, I feel Avatar was kind of the peak of...
Oh, it was... hands down the peak of 3D movies.
And kind of really started it. Would you consider the films that came out after it to be 3D exploitation films?
No, because Avatar, while it definitely perfected and hyped the shit out of 3D going in the movie to see itness. Mm-hmm. It didn't start it. It was not the first one.
No.
Arguably it was the best shot, but that was because it wasn't really shot. It was all 3D rendered. And because the concept of 3D-ness in movies has always existed.
Yeah.
There has, from the dawn of filmology, been an effort to make things look like they're popping off of the movie theater. Example being, one of the first movies ever produced was of the camera was set on train tracks and a train was shown coming at the audience.
The train arrives at the station.
Yeah. And the idea of something coming directly at the audience back then was so new that was entertaining and scary and shocking. Less so now, obviously, because we're all used to movies.
Some of that is a bit of a legend. So
some of it is. But the concept of things coming at you.
The legend was that people, when they saw the train coming at them, they ran out because they thought a train was actually running at them. In reality...
I mean, it didn't look like a train, in my opinion.
Film had been around for a long time. Yeah. By that point, people knew what it was. If they were in awe, it was because that was...
the first of that sort of filming.
Yes.
Most of filming before that had either been done like a stage, a standard, like, theatrical performance.
Vaudeville
live.
Performances is normally what they showed.
Or things were done in what we would think more of now as like a 2D scrolling platformer style, and they did that so that they could do the cool special, what back then was special effects, where they were snipping bits
like
here
George
and there.
Méliès.
Exactly.
Yeah, and who is the great-great-great-grandfather of film special effects, which I love. I love how that came to be.
Yes, very much so.
Do you know how it came to be?
Not entirely.
Okay.
I've seen quite a lot of his work, though.
So it was actually really interesting. So he was filming a street scene and his camera jammed.
Oh, that's right. I do remember this now.
Yeah, and so while he's fixing it, he started filming again, and then when he developed it, it changed from people walking down the street to a hearse driving by.
Yes. And I think he did it again to see if it still worked, and at that point, a car had moved or something like that, and made it look like the car had turned into a truck.
Yep. And that's how special effects was born. Just a simple little mistake.
Yes.
Not even a mistake, just part of the making process.
Yes. And so I think the concept, and especially how this movie portrays 3D, while I'm sure in theaters was a little bit more in your face than it was at home. It doesn't feel like how some of them feel with their 3D gimmickiness. It felt more like a lot of the scenes felt homage to that original want of things popping out at you without actually popping out at you. Yeah,
it almost felt like it was not the best CGI. Like it was one of the...
I had complaints about it.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that.
Yeah, but it feels like it was one of those movies where it wasn't supposed to have like the highest CGI budget.
No. And I also think that part of the reason why this I think a lot of actually 3D movies, and this one included, fall more in that hope and dream category that the original movies fell into, is because a lot of the 3D, while a lot of them are quick and popping out at you to hopefully get a reaction, I think even more of them are hoping that you will be awed by some level of detail that you wouldn't otherwise see. Like the bullet scene.
Yeah.
And so I think because of that, I would say no, they're not exploiting that original concept. They're exploiting an older...
The trend. Well...
They're exploring this idea of a smaller level of detail.
Well... I would say, in a way, they are, because part of the definition of exploitation is they are trying to cash in on a trend.
I suppose so.
In that regard, I do agree. I don't feel they're the level of, like, how Cannibal Holocaust is a cannibal exploitation film.
Agree.
This is more of, this was popular, let's recreate it, kind of.
I would say, sure. I would say more so for the advertising of this film. Because I have seen a couple of trailers, and some of the trailers were standard trailery, and some of them were very much relying on you wanting to see a 3D movie, which I think is pretty standard for a lot of 3D movies nowadays, especially now that the, like, awe value from 3D has kind of worn off for the general audience.
Do they even make 3D movies anymore?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No.
You have to take your glasses and put them in the little bin, and then you get to, like, unwrap them when you get to the theater, and then there's the screen. Yeah, they still make them. Is it as popular? No. I don't think it was also as lucrative as people were wanting it to be.
Because, yeah, it was, like, double the price of a ticket for it.
I don't think it's extra anymore, at least not here. Which we've learned movie watching in this town is much different than a lot of other places that we've lived.
I am so frustrated with the movie theaters here.
No matinees for us.
No, not just that. Their selection of films.
Oh,
like,
it's interesting.
It's hit and miss. There's not even... Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
We don't live in a movie town. That's for sure.
Even though we have a film festival... and a new downtown cinema that
we do have
is in junction with
also,
it.
don't we have a movie that was like produced and based here?
Oh god, yeah.
I feel like it was. I didn't see it.
It was filmed in Bentonville. I saw the trailers for it because I was in a movie watching.
Sure. I didn't see it. I feel like maybe I was supposed to have to maintain my Bentonville license, but
it looks like garbage.
Well, they tried.
It looks like a ripoff Ava from WALL-E.
Aww. Okay. I mean, I'm impressed they even managed to film stuff here, so I'll take it. I don't hold it to high expectations.
No, I don't.
But, with that said, I think this movie, as with a lot of Nic Cage movies, its shining point is DVD.
Yes.
At home, with a group of friends, all watching a nonsense film.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely say this is a movie if it could... I don't see it actually developing it. Like, 8mm has a cult following to it.
Yeah, no, I don't see this.
This film, I feel if it was released in the 90s, when movie rental, you went down to Blockbuster and picked out the DVD or the VHS, it would be more...
Hi, Charlie, what are you doing?
I feel...
I agree, though. I think this would have been a solid blockbuster success.
Mm-hmm.
This definitely would have been a movie for our generation, when you used to take movies over to friends' houses in hopes to getting them to watch it. This is definitely one of those style of movies. Mm-hmm. I think that's when this movie was probably going to hit its peak, if it was going to have one.
Yeah.
It's still a fun movie, but I don't think this is going to develop the cult classic status that a lot of other ones do.
No, not at all. Like, at least The Wicker Man. The Wicker Man kind of has this cult following because it is of itself.
Well, and I think part of the reason why this one probably won't is because while I had lots of questions, and we've talked about those questions, you're not lacking anything so badly that you are like hoping for any sort of more information. Kind of like one of my favorite movies is Van Helsing. Yes. And that's part of the reason is because I am just hoping and praying that someday at least a graphic novel will be released.
Yeah.
Because there's so many questions that are vital to the story and the characters, whereas this one, while it'd be nice to have more depth and background, it wouldn't change any of their characters.
Yeah. No.
And it wouldn't change how, if you wanted to theoretically think about how this movie could go after the film stopped.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about that for this movie. You're not thinking about the next adventure that the characters are going on. You know Nic Cage is going to hell, and Pepper is now a mom. Congrats.
Going to hell with Meatloaf playing behind him.
Yes. We all appreciated the Meatloaf. There's actually an odd number of references to other movies in this movie, which I liked because they were blatant enough that I got them. Mm-hmm. A good example is there was what the director called an homage, and what I call a blatant ripoff of the Star Wars trench fighter scene with one of the cars. And I like it because it's over the top, it's silly, it's in an over the top and corny movie, so to me it works. It's not taking itself seriously, but the whole movie is peppered with bits like that.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think it's enough that like people who hate those sort of references would necessarily be completely put off by this movie. No. But it is enough for those of us who are like, I've seen 2 movies. You can enjoy it. Yeah. You at least get to get a reference.
Yeah, it's a fun movie.
Definitely.
I do want to ask a couple questions. So, in one of the special features, Nicolas Cage, as we know, as we talked in our first spotlight.
Dear Nicolas Cage.
Describes his acting method as nouveau shamanistic.
Yes, he does.
He describes this character as the Terminator via Edgar Allan Poe.
I don't see it, but I don't know, maybe if you held it at arm's distance and squinted really good. I don't see it. I honestly feel like this character was much closer to it, to simultaneously watching an old western, an old man western, where you've got a guy on his horse doing the best he can in an outlawed country while simultaneously watching Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift at the same time.
I haven't seen any of the Fast and Furious movies, so
don't worry.
I can't get that as a point of reference.
Tokyo Drift is maybe not the correct one. One of the Fast and Furious movies. Maybe the second Fast and Furious movie.
Okay.
Because the first one has the cars and the action, but the second one also has the cars and the action without the profound character development.
Yeah, the only thing I can see is, like Terminator, he's an almost unstoppable machine. He is,
and I will also give him that Nicolas Cage took point to play this character with little emotion.
Mm-hmm.
The character doesn't have... he's clearly driven by rage and anger, and that's kind of it. Even in the scenes where he's supposed to be having a good time or showing off to Piper. He's still not really a happy guy. He still seems angry.
You could say he drives angry.
Yes, you could. Yes, you very much could. And I think that's probably where he was going for with the Terminator bit, because I feel like the Terminator part of that character was he was a robot, especially the first one, where he did feel a little soulless because of the lack of emotion for things at times. Yeah, he was just something there to kill people. He's more like Terminator and Terminator 2. I would agree with that.
Yeah, where he has more personality because not that he cares.
He does not care.
But you personified his caring onto him.
Yes. And, would I say that Nic Cage manages to vocalize what he is doing to other people very well? No, I do not think his description is very good. I do, however, think his method acting, as much of a pain as I'm sure he is to work with, it does work for this movie.
Actually, from everything I've heard, he doesn't really seem like he's a pain to work with. He genuinely seems like he is a joy to work with.
That's very good, because I'm not gonna lie, a man getting a shell down his britches while he's filming a movie doesn't sound like the height of my day at work, but I don't know, maybe it was hilarious. I'm sure it was hilarious.
Well, there was also something Amber Heard said, the actress who played Piper.
Yes.
That made me do a little bit more research on his films that he's been in. She describes him as a king of this genre.
I would agree with that.
Well, I learned he actually has a connection to Hobo with a Shotgun.
Oh, and what 5 degrees of Jordan did you get to there?
He is the criminal mastermind, Dr. Fu Manchu, in the fake trailer, Werewolf Woman of the SS, by Rob Zombie in Grindhouse.
Of course.
Which, that title is a reference to a film series that I want to get around to, but is actually pretty hard to find nowadays. Isla, She-Wolf of the SS. More exploitation films.
Oh my goodness.
I did not plan to have this number of exploitation films in.
No, but I also think that Nic Cage's over-the-top acting abilities do lend himself to this genre very well.
Which, I do want to see Mandy. I've been trying to get to it at some point.
Yeah.
And then, Mom and Dad.
Sure.
The movie is lackluster, and his character plays a very small part, but his over-the-topness, as he describes it, mega acting.
I would agree with that one term.
Yes.
I don't agree with a lot of his terminology, but mega acting, I think, sums up Nic Cage very, very well.
Whatever the hell Western Kabuki is.
I don't know still. I still don't understand how that is an acting style, and I don't understand how it defines his acting style.
Nouveau shamanistic, I can understand a little bit more.
I at least can put both of those words together in my mind. His other ones, maybe for certain movies, but not all the time.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, I think because he thinks so hard about acting, and it's kind of like the conversations I have with my husband about music, who he was trained in music, he went to university to study music, and I am just a casual listener of the bebops. And so when I listen to music, I am just here to listen to the good tunes, and he's down here dissecting the chords and the structure and the keynotes and all of that sort of jazz. Like, he's listening to every layer of the music, and I feel like Nic Cage is like that with acting.
Yeah.
He's here dissecting all of the layers for us to just enjoy the bebops.
Yeah, I feel he's one of those actors who, the more I hear about him when he was still alive, Anton Yelnats?
Sure.
Oh, shit. Yeah, Anton Yelchin, the guy who,
Oh, him.
Yeah. They describe, like, his acting like he was a film nerd.
Yes, and I would agree with that statement being applied to Nicolas Cage.
Especially knowing that he's been wanting to do this since he was a child.
Yes. Yes. And so I think part of the reason why, especially in interviews and when Nicolas Cage is given the mic to describe his character in movies, he comes off as odd, I think is because he's in too deep. And most of us are not in that level. I think we're all over here enjoying the movie for what it is, and the goofiness and the over-the-topness, and he's, trying to explain on a critical level what he did. Which I appreciate. I appreciate that he puts that level of effort into even a movie as silly and as arguably not as large an audience as this movie.
It's like Christmas a couple of years ago when I drank too much and followed my youngest brother around giving him the history of Star Wars.
Yes, this is very similar to that. And honestly, like, I think that's part of what makes Nic Cage Nic Cage. Yeah. I think if he lost that passion, I don't think his movies would be as much fun to watch.
No, he definitely has that charisma that draws you.
Weird charisma, but it is there.
Yeah. But it draws you to him. Like,
it definitely you can feel it through his movies, even without having watched any of his interviews or trailers on that.
Yes.
Like, you can tell. Especially
starting off as someone who absolutely despised him.
Fair.
I have come to appreciate him, and though he's not an attractive guy to me still, I enjoy his charisma.
I do too, and I think part of the reason why I am enjoying Nic Cage November as much as I am is because I have reached the point where, much like other actors, but less so, I am enjoying the movie without having to directly try to imagine Nic Cage as that person. I'm just enjoying watching a guy play that character for a while. Yes. Which, if you watch it without having to be completely submerged in this world where that person has to look exactly like it, it's a great time.
Yeah. So, Chris, what would you rate this movie?
I would rate this a nice big skull of beer. This is a very fun movie. It is an over-the-top movie, but it is a lot of fun. Would I say this is a have-to-watch? No. Now, you could go your whole life without seeing this and be perfectly comfortable and happy. However, if you like over-the-top action films, if you like over-the-top driving films, and you don't mind a little extra grunge gore, and the very awkward sex scene with exactly 2 nipples, then this movie is a lot of fun and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I watched this movie while drinking with friends.
It's a very fun one to have in the background with dinner.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. It's not a must-see.
No, but it is
unless
fun.
You're trying to watch every Nicolas Cage movie like I am.
Yeah, a very ambitious goal.
He has
a lot of movies.
104.
It's a lot of movies.
It is a lot.
But, now you have a hobby for the next couple days.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll come up with a rating system of What level of Nicolas Cage is this?
I would say if bottom level Nicolas Cage is like him yelling nonsense terms at you that have no sense, and like top level is his Academy Award winning performances. I feel like this one sits somewhere at the 3 or 4 range.
It's definitely a mid-Cage role.
It's a mid-Cage role.
I got it. Normal acting to mega acting.
Oh, very nice. Yes. If 1 is normal acting and 10 is mega acting, I would say this is somewhere between maybe a 3, 4, or 5, depending on your personal preference.
Slightly over the top, but not mega acting.
Definitely not mega acting. And arguably, another actor in the same role could have given a similar level of ridiculousness.
Yes.
This isn't Nicolas Cage putting himself on the line for his art.
No. But anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.